Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I got to start you off today in my Twitter feed here because I was looking through some of the amazing imagery that we saw over this past weekend, and the first thing I got to talk about is Jeff. All right, I don't know who this guy is, but man, I'm a little jealous here. His first tornado picture in Saskatchewan here is of this monster. I think back to my first tornado that I ever saw, skinny little rope thing all wrapped up in rain near Willard Airport in Champaign County, and I compare it to what he saw, and I'm a little bit jealous here. But I'm sure a lot of you saw this as well. This was in Kyrgyzstan, and just this incredible, apparently a collapsing glacier that just threw snow and all sorts of other debris down through this kind of mountain pass area. And as I was watching this, it's kind of funny. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this person going to survive? And then I realized the video made it out. So I guess the person must have made it out as well. Just amazing to see, what Mother Nature can do here. I thought you might want to see this. I'm sure it's made national news circuits as well. Just incredible to see that. So the credit for that video goes to Rebecca, and just amazing. But I got to be honest, the image that's really gotten stuck with me is this one. And coming back to some data analysis here, this is total precipitation ranks by climate district from June 12th to July 10th. So that's basically our last month. And what I'm really focused in on is the rapid drought expansion we've seen down here in the southern part of the United States, Southern Plains specifically, getting into the Mid-South. We have multiple climate reporting districts that over the last month are now having their driest such time period on record. And the drought throughout here is extensive, it's damaging, and it's caused a lot of problems. So from western Kentucky, Tennessee, straight through the panhandle of Texas, this has been the hardest hit area. Now, why I'm so focused on that is because I think about this region and the surrounding regions later on. Because when we see drought developing throughout the Mid-South, it has me concerned about not only the Mid-South, but places to its north later on in the season. When you try to transport moisture from the Gulf of Mexico through this, all right, later on this year, which remember, the primary source for all of the thunderstorm activity we have east of the Rocky Mountains is from the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic, the closer you get to the coast here. Because of that, we've got to see how this moisture can advect or move in that direction. And if you've got too much dry air here, it can steal the moisture and not allow it to get farther to the north. And we've been concerned all year long about the development of drought in the plains and in the Midwest and what that could mean. So I'm going to be having to watch this just extremely carefully over the coming days and weeks, given how dry the conditions have been here. It's been a very active southwest monsoon. Troughing off the west coast here has brought in lots of rain and storms that have hit parts of the Pacific Northwest. And there's just regional pockets of drought that are developing around other parts of the country when you look at this. So I want to show you something here. I went back and I tried to find all of the July and August combined that were the driest for the state of Iowa. And then I wanted to know, well, what happened in the June and July before that? Now you notice that we had a lot of dry conditions in through here. It was wet in the southeast, wetter than average in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, so let's just label these real quick. There we go, wet, dry, wet. And the reason why what I was wanting to know here was, in these years, which were so dry in that part of the western Corn Belt, was there already drought in place to the south or to the east? And there was, although you can see that it was also drier farther to the north as well. And only because I got asked, I'd like to show you something here, okay? So this, again, is this year, 2022. And what did it look like in 2012? There's just a lot of folks seeing the record drought down here want a comparison, so I'd like to show you. This is that same time period, again, the 12th of June to the 11th of July then. And you notice, yeah, we were dry here, but we were also dry in the southeast through the eastern, in fact, just this whole region was extremely dry all the way up to New England. So a much different animal, because it wasn't June and early July that was super dry down here. It was actually back in April and May. And that was one of the reasons why the drought expanded farther to the north. So I just want to let you all know that I'm concerned about it. This is not a guarantee, but it just means that if we've got a lot of dry air in here, until that dry air is eliminated and removed, and the soil's replenished, it's going to be difficult to return moisture past it. That's just something we're going to have to watch. Latest drought monitor, we talked a lot about this on Thursday, but I just want to bring this up again to show you that a lot of the rain we saw over the weekend and some of the rain we saw in the last 7 days really is going to work hard on eliminating some of the drought you see on this map, specifically going through the state of Illinois, into Indiana a little bit, Ohio, and then down here into the southeast. Because when we look back at the recent rainfall, this was a bit of a surprise. The rains that came in through here, the storms we saw coming out of Nebraska through Iowa and pockets of northern Illinois, very poorly forecast by the models. They did come through with some very strong winds. I saw gusts 70 to 90 miles an hour through here. But if you would have looked at a forecast map yesterday for this time period, you would not have seen rain in this region from any of our high quality models. And that's just what happens in summer. It's very difficult for the models to capture that behavior. So we add this up with what we've seen over the last 7 days, and one might be tempted to think that there was just major drought relief in the early part of the month, and that the Midwest specifically basically just bought a lot of time before they have their next drought risk. And that is the case in some places. As long as there's soil moisture, good soil moisture beneath these rains that have fallen, that's the case. But some of them really outperformed. I mean, we have some places in the last 7 days that picked up 6 to 8 inches of rainfall. We've gone a long way to help remove the drought stresses that have been in the southeast to the mid-Atlantic. And just pockets through here where there's been some very heavy rainfall and a lot of severe weather on the backside. So remember, this map includes the derecho event, all the hail that's been in parts of Montana, and some of the strong winds that we've seen here. But look at the white areas. These are the areas that have really missed out on this precipitation, and that's going to continue to be a major source of concern for us as we go forward. But what I'm concerned about here is this. I just left vacation. I drove from Minocqua, Wisconsin, straight down Interstate 39, which is somewhere about there, and then over 74 back home. And I had my wife and kids look out the window with me to try to find some cornfields that were in pollination so we could see some tassel. And to be honest with you, we didn't see any. So the point that I'm trying to make here is so much of this crop, especially in this part of the country, just focusing in here, is still at or going into pollination, meaning that going forward, we need more moisture than what we've got. Otherwise, the crop is going to be quite vulnerable. Another way to look at this is just to go back. In fact, let's make this, pump this up full screen. There we go. Is to go back and just look at the last 30 days in terms of percent of normal. And you can see the active southwest monsoon. You can see the increased thunderstorm activity in the northwest and Montana and the northern plains. And yet a lot of these have been severe. But there starts to show pockets coming out of Wyoming into Nebraska, the western Corn Belt here, and then in through New England that have been dry. Same thing for the eastern Corn Belt. But your eye is really drawn to this large region of extremely dry conditions from Texas and Oklahoma into parts of the Mid-South. And that's the region we've seen the lowest soil moisture values as estimated by NASA here. So stuff this image in the back of your mind to think about those regions that are most vulnerable going forward, because any little bit of precipitation they get, remember, there's still large deficits of soil moisture underneath them. I'm very concerned, especially about the Mid-South, and have been for some time. Here's the big reason why. The 12Z European model just released a few moments ago. I'm looking now at what we're seeing here in terms of precipitation anomalies. And so these would be drier than normal conditions, and these would be wetter. And again, we see that the southeast, we'll talk about why it's going to be quite wet. There's going to be some ridge-riding storms come along weak fronts here, and the southwest monsoon's going. But inside of this, there's a lot of areas that aren't going to see any rain at all over the next 10 days. And we're going to talk about why and what to be on the lookout for, because the temperatures in here are going to be cranking during this time period. It is still likely that even after this event happens, we could have another wave of heat and drought develop later on in the season. Here we are just on the 11th day of July, so there's still more time for this to continue. And yeah, we can point the finger at La Nina. But before I do that, I'd like to talk about why it's so wet in the southeast. National Hurricane Center has got their eye on this region here. They've kept the risk of development at 30% for this tropical disturbance. There is a weak frontal boundary sitting in through here. I'll show it to you in just a few seconds, that they're going to watch for the development of some of those tropical showers and storms to move on. What's going to happen is they're going to get pulled slowly over time right through the southeast. And while we don't see any significant development out of this, so no, the wind threat's not there, storm surge threat is not there. There's gonna be some heavy rain that comes through here. I'm also keeping my eye on an African easterly wave that's out here that could move in this direction. But at this point, over the next 10 days, I'm not seeing any major development. The MJO is not in the right phase to really help promote upward rising motion here to kick off, potentially a round of tropical storms that could develop into something, but that means all that's still to come later in the season. We'd like to show you how much rain we are expecting out of that, though. So this is just a little animation here zoomed in from the 12Z European model in the southeast. So as we just play it forward, you'll see a couple of things. On Tuesday into Wednesday, that's what I'm rocking back and forth over. There's a weak front that's going to initiate some storms in through here. So that'll be ahead of this would-be tropical surge of moisture. See it right there? That comes out later on this week and weekend into next week. So there could be some regions in through here that pick up 1 to 3, maybe some places much more than that right here in the panhandle of Florida or along the coast in Mississippi and Alabama. But it could extend up in eastern North Carolina. And you're going to see these models flip-flop quite a bit on the precipitation of the Carolinas over the next few days. But just wanted to get you up to date on what was going on with that weak tropical disturbance here. We brought our view back out to the whole globe in terms of ocean temperatures. And I wonder if you're seeing the thing that I really saw change a lot over the last few days. It's right here. We had quite a bit of cooler water in the Gulf of Alaska for a while. And now you can see that it's all filled in and it's quite warm. Now, what's the immediate consequence of this? Bringing in all this warm water here sensibly warms the lower atmosphere. And in fact, the sensible warming of the lower atmosphere is what helped to initiate the warming here. It cleared out the skies, brought in more sunshine to heat the water up. Now, what's the consequence? It's going to push the jet stream farther to the north. We're still anticipating troughs of lower pressure coming through, but instead of dipping farther to the south, they're going to be a little bit farther to the north. They'll run through British Columbia into the Canadian Prairie and then likely dive into New England. What this does is it takes the ridge, which last week was over the southeast, remember all the excessive heat warnings, well, really over the mid-south, and takes it back over to the Four Corner states. That's one of the consequences of seeing the warming of the water here. But it has not eliminated another part of this pattern, which is the strong La Nina. These trade winds in here, which again, that is the culprit. The ocean temperatures are the symptom. The thing that's causing the ocean temperature pattern to look like it does are strong trade winds. They're still smoking in this area, really moving fast. And the likelihood of us seeing this La Nina last into fall and early winter is still quite high. It's the highest of the 3 different options we have. You're saying, well, is there an El Nino developing behind it? The answer is no. The reason why you see some warmer water here is simply because there's not enough anomalously cold water beneath this to continue to upwell. So there's upwelling, it's just not colder than normal. That's what's going on here. We still see some warm water in the main development region for hurricanes, including the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and just off the coast. And that, again, is going to be something to be watching later, along with the wind shear for an active tropical season. But the thing I'm most concerned about is the models placing a large ridge somewhere between the Great Basin and the high plains. And if that's the case and the flow comes around that ridge like this, we need to see its influence in the central United States precipitation pattern. And that's what I want to show you next. This was just released this afternoon. It's the newest long-range update from the European model. It goes out 30 days. This is the 10th of July, the 11th of July through the 10th of August. And here's what we've got. With that ridge setting up, so the weaker troughs are coming in here. There's the Canadian storm track, and then the heights coming down like that. We end up placing, an upper level flow pattern, something like this. So that draws in the stronger southwest monsoon. It tends to produce higher pressure and drier conditions here. And then because there is, in this particular setup, another ridge out here, the Bermuda High, the flow kind of comes around that Bermuda High like this. It meets the flow coming off of the Central Plains Ridge like that. There's a lot of stationary boundaries that end up setting over the southeast, like the one we currently have, that's helping to take that tropical system and move in that direction. And the models are not really ambitious on knocking this down, and they never are. They tend to just really stick with what they're initialized with. So as I slide this forward, this is a 1-month sliding window. So here we are out to that time period. There's the 20th or 21st of July through the 20th of August. And we just take it out there. You start to see the pattern maybe erode a little bit, but overall we don't see major shifts in the pattern. So I want to take you back to this and just talk to you about a couple things that could really blow this forecast up, what could make it wrong. And to do that, I want to give you more of a North America view. Here's the first thing. If the troughs of low pressure, which are doing this, running over the ridge, that it come down like that, okay? If instead of getting us flow like that, we end up developing a Pacific jet stream that splits, and that can always happen, then this ends up being hotter and drier in the west. We shut down the southwest monsoon. The flow comes over the top and out, and this whole area goes overactive. That's one thing that could make this wrong. The second thing, I told you that we have this big subtropical high here. If it moves farther and farther toward the east coast, which is always a possibility, that ends up bringing more of that flow around like this, making much of the Corn Belt through the Mid-South, this whole area significantly wetter. The other thing that the models aren't resolving is that even with the pattern doing something like that, that's what we're currently forecasting, the model is not resolving in this area what we'll end up having in terms of ridge riding storms. And there will be isolated convective events here that will bring relief, just popping on the heat. So there'll be storms in this corridor and storms inside of this, but the model, due to its resolution and the ensemble technique used to make this map, is showing overall dry conditions in through this area. But there will be ridge riders, and they will likely come through the Canadian prairie and over the top of the ridge like this. And it's going to be a situation where we have to monitor daily who receives that precipitation and who does not. Now, I also want to remind you of this. Oftentimes, small events can trigger a growing downstream effect. And what I'm attempting to say in this is that just like we saw at the beginning of July, the model just deepening a trough over the Hudson Bay and bringing in all that rain for certain places throughout the Corn Belt into the east, that's still a possibility overall. And I just want to make you aware of that. I showed you on Thursday the new ECMWF long-range forecast, and we talked about this and looked at it all the way out for the next several months. And this, again, is the July, August, and September. But there's something I would like to bring to your attention I didn't cover last time. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to click on South America, and I want to take you forward in time to this map. It's September, October, November, when they're allowed to start planting the next crop. The model's quite wet north. See that? Which means for Mato Grosso to Goiás, Tocantins, Minas Gerais, Bahia, this is where they plant the crop first. The soybeans, right now, if it's wet like that, they're going to get that crop in fast. But this dryness in southern Brazil and parts of Argentina, that is telltale La Nina symptoms. And I just want to let you know that right now, that's what the longer range models really hung up on for this fall in the northern hemisphere, spring in southern hemisphere. And just since I mentioned the fall in the northern hemisphere, just want to take you back again. This is also very typical La Nina fall type weather. Active tropical cyclone season, we talked about that on Thursday, drier in the interior, wet early in the northwest. So this is all predicated on that La Nina hanging on. And nearly every long-range model is suggesting that. I'm going to show you the new NMME updates. Let's just go out to that time period for fall, and you'll see here that the NMME is also still staying aggressive on maintaining the La Nina out into October, November, December. But in the meantime, I want to show you what they're talking about for the rest of summer in terms of precipitation. This is August, September, and October. So we're drier from Texas up into the upper Midwest in the model. It's wetter along the coast. So this is shared among the European model. If I could make some adjustments, I'd say that it's probably too dry in through this area. And I'd expand the drier conditions farther back to the west. I think we're going to see more of the ridge riding storms in this region that are going to really beat back some of the problems here as we go into July and eventually into August and September especially. So I'll leave it at that as my long-range update. Next, I want to take you to the latest update here from some satellite imagery. And you can see that stalled out boundary. Watch right down here. You're going to watch the storms just fire along that boundary. That's going to be the trigger for the potential tropical development here. Elsewhere, we do have a low that's curling up through the Great Lakes, and we're going to keep our eye on possible thunderstorm development in this area today and then tomorrow along the East Coast for some severe storms. But what I also wanted you to see is as the sun's getting lower in the sky, you can start to see a lot of the air quality issues we're seeing in this area, and a lot of that's actually coming from some wildfire smoke from fires out west. And you notice right here, this is the Washburn fire, the powerful one that's in large one that's in parts of California. And it's pretty awesome. There's this new tool that was put out by NOAA that's kind of monitoring the smoke. And here's an animation from the latest update. It's great. Can you see how the frontal boundary is pushing that smoke farther to the south? But you can, I apologize for that. But you can still see the smoke spreading across parts of California into parts of Oregon here from this particular event. And then the Four Corners are quite smoky too. Now, I also wanted to show you this. This is Alaska. So that's where you are. There's Russia, Alaska, Canada, northern Canada. Look how smoky things are there. I'm going back in time. I love this animation because that's right there. That's the day-night line. So remember, we're in summer, so the sun isn't setting up here. Just 24 hours of sunshine. But once the sun rose this morning for the rest of Alaska, you can see how much smoke is there. A lot of wildfire activity. And I want to give you the latest update on looking at our year-to-date statistics, because right now, compared to the last decade, more acres have burned in the United States than any year in the past decade. It's double the average. Here's average. We're at 4.8 million, 2.4 million is the average. But if you see where those wildfires are and have been, it's in Alaska. So 2.4 million acres have burned in Alaska. And you look at some of the other states, the only other one really that comes close is going to be New Mexico. And a lot of these fires were back in May and early June. So just wanted to bring up to speed on a couple of important things with respect to western U.S. wildfires. But what we're seeing right now is nothing compared to the last few years, especially throughout the western United States. Okay, here is the big picture in the near term. As I play this forward through Tuesday and Wednesday, getting out there to Thursday and Friday, it's the openness of this large ridge, and it's been expanding. We keep seeing troughs of low pressure coming out of this area, dipping down, Canadian storm track, and there's that flow we talked about. The placement of this ridge is most important for who's going to get the rain and who's not. There will be ridge running storms here that the models are not resolving right now. And there's going to be a lot of wet weather in the southeast. But throughout the plains, this is going to be the region that's going to be most dry, given that flow coming around just like that into the drier air. And that lasts all the way out through the weekend into early next week. Troughs of low pressure keep moving through Canada, running around the top of that larger ridge. So where do we have the severe weather threat? Today, it's going to be along that weak frontal boundary. You saw pushing the smoke farther to the south. We're going to watch through this area later on tonight. Next, tomorrow, pushes into New England. Then we get here to Wednesday, and it's now in the southeast up into the mid-Atlantic where that frontal boundary goes through. I'd like to spend a lot of time on this animation, but we really just need to see the overall flow. So this is starting 7 o'clock tonight, pushing forward. You see the storms coming throughout the Great Lakes, right here on the boundary, late tonight, through Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois. We're going to have to watch this carefully, stretching all the way back to Missouri and Kansas. Then that front continues to push farther and farther to the south and east, goes over the Appalachian Mountains tomorrow and Tuesday. And here's all the convection to the south. That's going to become that tropical system. So by Tuesday night, there's the front. Here's the southwest monsoon, and it just keeps pushing forward, increasing the chances for strong to severe storms on Wednesday here. Okay? Scattered storms on the back side of this, but just watch it again. Ready? That's the flow through the middle of this week. Now, as we know, being in the middle of summer, our lower resolution models can't pick up on the larger features. But let's take a look at the GFS versus the ECMWF. ECMWF is right now outperforming the GFS by an average of about 4%. So that's the better skill score. We've seen through Wednesday afternoon and evening. Now you're going to see a lot of flashes of green in the southeast, plus the tropical system coming through. You're going to see a low sitting and spinning off of British Columbia. That's in the trough that's farther to the north. And outside of that, just weak clusters of storms that try to move through here. Like on Friday, it's in both models. Something coming through there Thursday night to Friday morning. And then you notice in the southeast, the heavier rains here. So see these weak fronts coming through? That's what we're going to watch late this week. This is on Saturday for the development of some thunderstorms. Outside of that, it's just storms popping in the southwest monsoon, weak frontal boundaries moving through the Great Lakes. See it here on Monday. This is actually Sunday night, Monday morning, and then initiating storms along the East Coast. That would now be Monday night into Tuesday. There's our next system right here, coming through the north of the Canadian Prairie, to be honest with you, and that's where the storm track is going to be. So it's very, very subtle features that are moving through, meaning that the big models, the ECMWF and the GFS, are really going to do a poor job of capturing your precipitation pattern overall. Okay, so that takes us out about 10, 11 days here. Let's now go look at maybe a map that's a bit more instructive. This map here shows the probability of getting an inch of rain over the next 10 days. So now what we start to see is the only places that have high probabilities are the southeast, parts of the Great Lakes states here, northern, the upper Midwest, the Canadian Prairie, and the southwest monsoon. On the flip side of that, here's the probability of getting less than a half inch over that time period. And it's quite expansive where you are close to that ridge. And that's that area we're most concerned about, because during the same time, it's going to go over warmer. We kind of talked about why. All the way out there to July 21st, that ridge is still present. But this is your flow pattern going forward. There will be ridge riders, but inside of this, it's going to be hotter and it's going to be drier. And that is the week 2 precipitation anomalies from the GFS. My modifications are, I got this active storm track through the Canadian Prairie, but I would just say this particular area, maybe even starting as soon as Montana, could see a lot more thunderstorm activity than being alluded to here. This is my spot that I'm most concerned about going over drier. Now from there, I want to show you some temperature information. This would be June 12th through July 10th, looking at temperature ranks by climate district. You can now see how hot the last month has been in the midsection of the country, Texas to North Dakota, and then throughout the southeast and the southwest. But look at these overnight lows. Same time period, we have seen top 10 through many climate reporting districts in through this area, top 10 warmest overnight lows. And where we start to get concerned about this is as we go forward, warm overnight lows in July and August can have quite a detrimental effect on crops as they go through their reproductive stages. And I'm specifically thinking about corn, so we'll just have to watch that quite carefully. Another metric I want to start showing you more often is this one. It's the accumulated stress degree day map. This is basically where you add up all of the degrees above 86 Fahrenheit each day. This was developed by Elwyn Taylor out of Iowa State, and in his research, which was primarily in Iowa on dryland farming, he found that any time that, at least through 2012 when he published these results, that any time that more than 140 stress degree days were accumulated in a growing season, he didn't find above trend yield. So we're watching for these numbers to switch over from the green colors, which are below 140, up to the red colors, which would be above it. Now again, this applies only to dryland corn farming, but it's just an important metric to be thinking about here. Right now, the hottest air is in the south. Excessive heat watches and warnings, excessive heat advisories, and we can also see them running up the west coast here as well, now hitting part of the Columbia Basin. And if we take a look at these temperatures, this is max temperatures first. So here we are today, hot one down in the south, a very hot one up the west coast. Going into Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, that heat moved out of the west and now occupies a big section of the mid part of the country. So 100-degree heat all the way up to South Dakota here. The cooler weather we've been seeing here behind those fronts, it's going to be leaving by late in the week. So Friday, getting into Saturday, and by Sunday, what we see here is that moving into western Iowa, Missouri here, mid to upper 90s. And west of that, we're just going to keep those mid to upper 90s and lower 100s. And that gets us out the next 7 days. Something to think about here, though, I'm going to go back to my temperature maps. By the time we get into this weekend, let's get to it. There's Friday into Saturday. This white contour is where the overnight lows are above 70. So on Saturday into Sunday, we see those warm overnight lows encroaching on the western Corn Belt and all the way down here to the southern plains. Very hot overnight lows. Longer term, this is what the CPC updated today, the 19th through the 25th. Excessive heat risk is high, right where we began our discussion today. Moderate throughout this dashed line, and then slight risk there. So we have a long time period in the middle of July where there's going to be some excessive heat. The question is, how long does this last? We've presented evidence that it's going to be there at least to the 25th or 26th. Does it break down after that? That is still a possibility to see. We saw it in the last time we gave the forecast like this. It happened at the beginning of July. So let's keep aware of it. But I do want to finish with this temperature animation. 5-day sliding window playing out here through day 5 through 10. That's there. So there's the heat building into the middle part of the country, averaging, 8 to 10 degrees above normal. This map is in Celsius, so 8 to 10 degrees above normal here. And then as we play forward all the way out to that time period ending on the 26th of July, nothing broke down in this area. So we just continue to see the heat running around that ridge. We need to watch for those failure points I talked about earlier. Does something shift in the Pacific? Do we get a deeper low over the Hudson Bay? Do we start to see the ridge move from Bermuda over the southeast? All of those things could trigger a large pattern change. And there's other options as well. The MJO bumps out and starts to shift around. I'll keep watching it. I'll report again on Thursday. But I want to make sure that you understand that while I can confidently talk about the pattern, there is a lot of uncertainty with this beyond the next couple of weeks. I'll keep you updated. Appreciate your attention today. Thanks.